of this government, we are now seeing one of the most intense period of construction activity in New Zealand's history.
Question number 7, the Honourable David Parker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for the Environment. Does he stand by his answers to oral questions numbers 6 and 11 on Tuesday this week?
Mr Speaker?
The Honourable Dr.
Yes, in the context in which they were given.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question. The Honourable David Parker.
When someone goes into the supermarket or gas station and buys a bottle of pristine New Zealand mineral water, do they own the water in the bottle or just the bottle?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
I expect it's not much different to owning the soft drink or owning the beer, even my home brew.
Supplementary. Supplementary.
Order. Order. Supplementary question, the Honourable David Parker.
Given his obvious commercial expertise, at what point in the supply chain did the water in the bottle gain a monetary value? Was it when it was drawn from the source, when it was bottled, when the distributor bought it from the bottler, when the distributor sold it to the retailer, or when the customer bought it?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
It's not nearly as complicated as the member would have. When someone puts water in a pipe, say a council, it is then able to charge for the services of the storage, the treatment and the like. When water is added services to it, such as when it's made into my fine home brew, it adds in value considerably.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, the Honourable David Parker.
Why should companies using New Zealand's precious water as a raw material for what they're bottling not pay a royalty back to the New Zealand public?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, the government is happy to have a discussion about charging for water, but we need to do so in an equitable way. And when I hear proposals from the likes of Stuart Nash of charging 10 cents per litre, a price that would devastate our dairy industry, I say, well, the horticultural industry, like his own area, then I just simply say that the government needs to go about this in a fair way that considers all water users.
Supplementary.
Point of order, Stuart Nash.
Mr Speaker, this is the second time that the Minister has said that I have made a statement which I have never made, and I would like to see evidence of that.
I will hear from the Honourable Dr. Nick Smith before I
I'd be
make a
happy
ruling.
to table the article in the newspaper in which he advocated a 10 cents a litre charge on all water users.
Now, the latter part, the addition by the Honourable Dr. Nick Smith will not actually help the order of the House. The member needs to look at Standing Order 359. If he feels he's been misrepresented, then there's a process that he follows. Through that process, it's not a matter of raising it as a point of order in the House. Further supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, the Honourable David Parker.
Is the Minister surprised that New Zealanders can see through his delaying tactics on applying a royalty to commercial water use until after the election, in the same way they saw through his low water standard categorising polluted rivers as swimmable?
Oh, Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
On both fronts, I'm more than happy to stand on this government's track record of water reform, because when that guy was in government for 9 years, they did absolutely nothing.
Question number 8, Jonathan Young.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Communications.